Welcome back to Clear Conscience Pet Radio on the All Paul's Pet Talk Radio Network. This is your host, Anthony Benny, and I am very pleased to present our second guest, our last guest for today, and that's Paul Pollock. And Paul is with Sit Means Sit of Cleveland, Akron. So today's our All-Ohio Day. We had our friends from Sinlawn in Northeast Ohio, so maybe we're making a geographical tour through the Midwest. But Paul, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. How are you doing?
I'm doing absolutely wonderfully, and I'm so excited to have you on board with us and appreciative of your taking the time to do it. And let's face it, behavior issues, obedience, training, it's first and foremost on many, many people's minds when it comes to their relationships with their dogs. So we've got some really cool things to talk to you about, and we always love the opportunity to talk to trainers. So tell us how you tell us about Sit Means Sit first. Is Sit Means Sit is it a franchise? Is it a company that you created that has only one location? Tell us about the company itself a little bit.
Yes, Sit Means Sit is a franchise, and there's about 88 franchises throughout the United States and Canada.
Wow. And you're the owner of one of the franchises?
Yes, I'm the owner of the Sit Means Sit in the Cleveland, Akron, Ohio area.
And when did you open your franchise?
In November of 2007.
Wow, so you've been at this for a while now, almost 7 years. So congratulations. It's a fascinating business, but it's very hard work. I know from my decades in the animal care business that you can really get a lot of difficult issues thrown in your face, literally, when it comes to dealing with training dogs. Everything from aggression issues to serious problems with dogs that don't get along with other dogs or certain people. So, we could probably spend hours and hours, but let's just start with this simple question. What's the most common thing that people want you to help them with their dogs when they come to see you, Paul?
The most common thing people want to, in a short answer, would be for their dogs to be enjoyable members of their family. As society has grown, pets are more and more a part of the family. People take them more places and want them more involved in their daily family life. And in order to do that, they need to be trained and be able to behave out in public or when people are coming over to visit, things like that.
So good citizenship, as we say sometimes. Canine good citizenship. The ability to be in any situation without without causing a lot of trouble. Now, it's one thing to try to control our children is difficult enough, but they presumably speak English, and we need to learn to speak dog, don't we, to really communicate with our dogs?
Absolutely.
So tell me, if you have a dog that comes to you and they have an issue with aggression, because I think that's, of course, the most serious issue, and sometimes it could be a simple, not that it's simple, but as a limited thing where a dog has been really a fine citizen, so to speak, who maybe nips somebody or gets into a situation where there's now a concern, and it really breaks my heart sometimes because I hear situations where an animal is put into a bad situation and they just react, and very serious consequences can happen. So tell us how you deal with not like really hardcore aggressive dogs, because I think that's a different subject, but that poor dog that just has a bad day, and what questions do you ask the family? And I'm sorry if this is a little specific maybe to some of the things you wanted to talk about, but it's something that's come up recently in our world, not in our own, but a family that we know. So it'd be really cool if you could give us some guidance about that.
Sure. If it's not a severe aggression problem, and we deal with a lot of the nipping and things like that, and a lot of times the dogs are just put in bad situations. So the main thing you want to do, first off, is with training, get the dog's attention, because you have to be able to get the dog's attention so that they have some structure, they know what's expected of them, what's appropriate behavior, what's not, and just need some leadership. So once you start with training, and the dog knows the expectations, then everything else will fall in place. But the main thing is you have to be able to get the dog's attention, because if you don't, that's when things can go wrong.
So that's a great first step, is that you have to have the skill set to even be able to engage the dog into the process of training. I think that people try to do this on their own. You know, the old expression, "Don't try this at home." Well, of course, you know, we should try to train our dogs at home. That's where they live. But there are times when you just really need the help of a professional, and having the option to work with someone like Sit Me and Sit and with you, Paul, is, I think people need to realize that these resources are available, and that it's not, you know, they don't have to figure this out on their own. There's folks like you who have devoted your lives and really trained in training so much that you're going to make this so much easier for them than trying to do it yourself. So I think that, you know, one thing I want to emphasize is don't hesitate to contact the professionals, because that can make all the difference in the world. You know, you're not going to try to do your own electrical work in your home or your plumbing if you're not a plumber or an electrician. So don't assume you can, you know, be an effective dog trainer if that's not your profession. So, you know, for these situations, I really highly recommend that folks, you know, are willing to spend a little bit of money and a little bit of time, and the results can be so satisfying that you'll be very, very pleased that you've done that.
Yeah, and the main thing is, you know, I always tell people to think about it this way. You know, you're a radio talk show host. If I took over your job for a couple of weeks, when you came back, I can guarantee that things wouldn't be running real smoothly. You know, I wasn't trained to do your job. So we can read dogs very quickly. We can pick out what's happening by asking questions, observing the dog's behavior, and the vast majority is very, very, very correctable. It's all fixable. A lot of it's just making the people aware of what's causing the dog to exude those behaviors. Right.
So kind of doing a little bit of detective work, so to speak, asking the right questions, sort of, instead of just you know, dealing with the symptoms to try to get to the causes, and then sort of correct from there. Now, the old expression, and, you know, gosh, I hate cliches, but this is one of those that I'm sure you've heard a million times. It's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. Now, sometimes, you know, folks have a situation where a dog who's just been perfectly fine at 7, 8 years old starts to have some difficulties and problems, whatever they may be. And without getting into the specific problem, is that really just a total myth? Is there any real correlation between the age of a dog and their trainability?
No correlation at all. Other than with, you know, if you're comparing it to a puppy, the puppy's learning ability isn't as high as an older dog. But we train dogs from puppy stage, and the oldest one I've personally trained is 14 years old, or was 14 years old. Yeah.
Well, thank you for dispelling that myth, because I kind of felt that was the answer, but to hear it from a professional like yourself is really important, because I don't want anyone out there to ever think that because, you know, their dog is 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, if something's happening that's making them unhappy and making your household less harmonious, then, you know, don't assume that you can't just, you know, go and find a wonderful person like Paul to help you to figure it out. It may be as simple as some you know, a few sessions. And now, do you do your sessions both at home and in like a classroom setting at your facility? How does that work with Sit Means Sit?
Yeah, yes, we do them a few different ways. We do in-home private lessons where we'll go out to the client's house and work with them in their house where the dog's living, in that kind of situation. Added to with that, we add on group classes once the dog knows the commands and we have some attention with the dog, and the owners know how to handle the dog. We move them into a group class setting where we're basically all the tools that we've given them, we're just going to have the dogs be doing that with 20 other dogs and handlers in the room. So with just a lot more distractions. And then we also do, board and train programs where, yes, the dogs will come to our facility and we do all the training for them. So, you know, it's a lot of times people are busy, they have families, they have kids, or getting the kids to school, they get home, they don't have time to practice the stuff that we would show them in private lessons. And the reality is we're dog trainers, so we can fix things a lot faster. So they come stay with us, and by the time they go home, they're ready to go. They already know all the commands, and at that point, we're just teaching the owners the commands and then having the dog do it for them.
Great. Now, if we can, Paul, if we could have you back for our next segment, we'd love to have you back and just take a short break here. And when we come back, we'll talk about some more specific behavior issues so we can kind of get some tips maybe for folks to maybe at least try some little things that can help the situation. So we'll be back in a minute.
People of the world, let's get together. I know. Let's all make this world a better place.
Welcome back to Clear Conscience Pet Radio on the All Paul's Pet Talk Radio Network, your network for everything pet. And our guest for this portion of our program is Paul Pollock of Sit Means Sit in Cleveland, Akron area. And for those of you who aren't in Northern Ohio, by all means, look up Sit Means Sit online and see who the local franchisees could be in your area, because it's a great organization. And obviously with 88 franchises, they're doing something right. So welcome back, Paul.
Thank you.
So we were just, leaving with your saying that there are those who, because of their schedules and just, various circumstances, actually choose to leave a dog with you for a certain period of time to train, and kind of like sending your kids off to boarding school and hoping that they come back smarter and more gentlemanly or ladylike. So how long would somebody leave a dog with you for like a basic training program?
The basics go from anywhere from 7 days to 10 days to 15 and up to even 20.
Okay. So you obviously have a boarding facility that's part of your overall facility. And
correct.
And that gives you the opportunity to kind of have like an intensive, full day interaction with that dog and do different lessons throughout the day. Now, I've heard it said, and I want you to hopefully dispel this myth for us, that if you have a professional trainer train your dog, and you're not there, when the dog comes back to you, they're not going to listen to you. They're only going to have been trained by that trainer. And I really want you to dispel that, because I think it's such a great option for some people, and it could really be a lifesaver for some dogs. So I want to make sure that people understand that it really can work. So tell us how it can work and that transfers back to the family when you're done with the dog.
Yeah, and that's a great question, and a question that we are asked all the time. The nice thing about when a dog comes to us is we're able to, whatever the behavior issues are or challenges are, we're able to work the dogs through it very quickly, but we're also able to put them in a surrounding with other dogs and people and things like that. So we can work them through things all day long. So it's not like we're just working a dog and then putting away and then we come back the next day and get them. They're out in our facility all day long, and so they're observing other dogs. And dogs learn a lot. You'd be surprised how much they learn just by watching some balanced dogs play and have fun and interact with each other, whether a dog comes in and has a lot of anxiety or some aggression or just has always been in a house and not around a lot of other dogs other than when it's been taken for a walk. They don't know how to play with other dogs or interact with other dogs. So by watching and just observing it, they learn a lot that way, number one. Then number two, once you have the training, you're always able to be working with the dog. So even if the dog's out and it's not playing appropriately or something like that, you can fix it right away. So you're teaching the dog, nope, that's not appropriate. We want you to do this, not that. So it works. The clients that we train, and at our facility, we train over 500 dogs a year. And the people that do the board and trains, they are far and away blown away by them, because there's just no way that they can accomplish what we can accomplish with the dog when we're training at the facility as opposed to home. And that's not saying they're not going to get results if they train at home, but again, we're going to be working with them at home and then giving them some homework to practice through the week, and then next week we're going to come back and build on that. But at the facility, we can just fix so many things so quickly, and our attention's fully on the dogs because that's our job, right? To watch the dogs and make sure they're learning. And at home, there's a lot of distractions. Whether people have busy lives. They're working. They have children. Just different things going on that takes away from their training time with the dog. So we can get the dogs to a much higher level and bring up their confidence a lot faster as well by doing a board and train.
Now, do some folks do like a kind of a hybrid where they keep the dogs with you like for all day and then bring them home for for bedtime and dinner at home and then back the next day, kind of an intensive training program, but not with actual overnights? Is that option available as well?
We do not offer that option, and the reason we don't, and trust me, plenty of people ask because they miss their dogs, their family members,
of course,
right?
Yeah.
So, but we strongly recommend that they don't do it, just because it's harder on the dog when they miss their family or they're not thinking about the family because they're working with us, and then if the owners show up, the dogs are really excited to see mom and dad walk in, and then mom and dad pet them and then leave. Then the dogs are confused again. So it's just easier for the dog to let us do our job and work them through it. And what we do is, because we understand people miss their dogs, we do videos about every 3 to 4 days where we'll do a video of the dog, showing the dog what it's learning, and we'll show the dog playing with other dogs and interacting. So they get to see that it's having fun, but it's also learning. And then we'll either email them to them or send it like in a text video.
Oh, that's great. That makes a lot of sense. So you get the comfort of knowing how your dog's doing and getting kind of to check in by the video, but not distracting them or kind of undoing what you're trying to accomplish. So with your hard work all day by going home and kind of having to start all over again the next day. So I tell you, I highly recommend what you're discussing for those who, especially, I don't want to limit it, but for those who have problems that they really feel like they're just really bedeviling and they're just having trouble solving, why not trust someone like Paul, who's devoted his life and his career to doing this work, to give that a shot. Please, before you ever consider giving a dog up, go to someone like Paul and have him help you first, because that can make the difference. It could be the difference between a happy dog for the rest of his life with your family or a much, much less desirable result. So I encourage people in any way I possibly can to consider this option. The money that you'll spend will be repaid in spades and 100-fold with the joy of having a dog that's happy. If your dog is happy and well-adjusted and knows that they're not making you unhappy, because let's face it, if we're unhappy, our dogs know that, and they become more withdrawn, and it's a vicious circle, and I've seen it happen, and I'm sure, of course, you have, Paul. So try to break out of the cycle, and don't try to do it yourself. The professionals are there for
you. A lot of times it's easier to think about what's in the best interest of the dog, not your, and don't let your emotions get involved. Let the professionals jump in and help.
Well, that's good advice, because it's a loving decision to make. So if you say it's not a detached, cold thing to do, it's a loving decision that will actually result in your getting the dog that you always dreamed of having, and in your dog being just so much happier. So we do have some more time in this segment, and I wanted to discuss the issue of different breeds, because I think, again, sometimes there's breed prejudice, and, we call it breedism at times against certain breeds. Some dogs are dumber or smarter, and there's the brilliant Border Collie and the doofus Dalmatian, and these, I think some of these are cliches, but there could be some truth to some of them. So give us your observations about purebred dogs. I know you can't go through a whole huge list, but some of the ones that are, first of all, is there truth to the difference in trainability in different breeds, number one? And number two, if so, which breeds are more trainable and which ones do you have to work? I'm assuming you can train any dog, and I believe, and I'm sure that you can. Are some more difficult than others, and which might be in those categories?
Yeah, there are definitely some that are more challenging than others, but as you said, all dogs are trainable. I mean, we haven't found one that we can't train. There's certain dogs that are breeds, if you want to go with the breeds, that may be more stubborn or not as willing to please you. And there's other dogs that are very happy to please you. They just have to know what you want. And then you have use the border collie as an example of a very smart dog, which they're very, very smart and actually have a border collie. But the thing with those dogs is they're very smart and they're very high energy. So you have to be able to harness that energy and channel it. Otherwise, they're going to get in more trouble than any other dog because they get bored really fast and they're active. So they get themselves in trouble if they don't have.
So they're going to find something to do.
Yeah, exactly. And it's probably not what you want them to do.
Right. It's not your planned activity. It's their plan.
Right.
You see those bumper stickers, my border collie or my golden retriever is smarter than your second grader or whatever. It's like, well, yeah, they can prove that at times, can't they? By the trouble that they can get in and the stuff that they can open up. And boy, we've, because of the wonderful treats that we make, we get folks sending us stories of dogs and cats sometimes opening up cabinets and things to get at the treats. So, I applaud their ingenuity, but I know that their owners don't want them taking the treats without permission. So,
right.
Now, when it comes to small children and dogs, since we were talking about children, I would like to see if you could just give us some advice. Again, we're in a format here where we can't get into the level of detail that we would like to, but just some advice about both situations. One is that you have small children and you'd like to get that first family dog, or maybe the first one you've had since you've had children. Some people have had dogs earlier in life and then start a family and decide it's time to bring a dog into the family again, which is a wonderful decision. And alternatively, of course, the very common situation where a family with a dog has a child, and it can cause a lot of anxiety for the family, when they bring the baby home for the first time, and the family dog is there. So I know that's a lot. Let's start with the first scenario where we're talking about folks who have children and who've decided their children are young and they want to bring a dog into the family. What are some of the most important things to look at before making that decision?
The most important thing is to look at the family to look at their lifestyle and how active they want the dog to be with them. So if they're a very active family and want the dog to be participating and going to the kids' soccer games and things like that, you want to you can get a higher energy dog that wants to do that kind of stuff. If you want more of a family pet that's just going to hang around the house and on the couch with you, and you can give it affection and it gives you affection in return. You let it out to go to the bathroom, and that's the main thing you want. Then you would get a lower energy dog.
So that's great advice right there. Know your own lifestyle before you choose a dog, and then we won't go into every dog and their characteristics, but there's just tremendous resources available online and at your library that give at least general statements. And again, we acknowledge that those are general, but there's some pretty good truth to that there's a lot of difference in the activity level between a pug and a golden retriever, so or border collie. So do a little bit of homework, please. Don't just pick a dog on the basis of what looks cute to you at the moment. Really discuss your lifestyle, and of course, we recommend that you deal only with very reputable breeders that you can visit, or of course, rescue operations and rescues for certain breeds. I like breed rescues because sometimes folks really want a golden, and they don't want to do the buying a dog thing, and that can be very controversial. We'll stay out of that for today, but contact the Golden Retriever Rescue in your area, and or any other breed. Almost every breed has its own rescue group. Now, with the other situation where you already have a dog, and it could be any obviously variety of dogs, you're bringing that beautiful new baby home from the hospital for the first time, and you're walking in the house, and there's the dog, and there's the baby. What are some of the things you should do before you bring the dog home? Like I've heard people say, bring a blanket home or something that was near the baby before you bring the baby home to get the dog used to that smell. Is there anything to that? And please, I'm sorry for throwing out an amateur notion like that, but tell us some of the things that you can maybe do to make that preparation smoother and that introduction more rewarding.
Sure. First off, usually dogs are going to pick up that it's an infant, and they're not. It's not going to be like in the vast majority of cases, it's not going to be like an aggression issue. They're going to be curious. They may want to come up and smell the baby and things like that. But what we recommend is exactly what you said. Bring something home from the hospital that smells like the child. So it could be the blanket. It could be whatever, a shirt, or you can even bring your own shirt and have the baby laying on it. Come home, so it has that scent on it. You can let your dog smell it. You can even go as far as putting it in where the dog sleeps, so it associates that smell with good things, and also even put it in the dog's food, meaning if it's a T-shirt or a towel or whatever, you can pour the dog's dog food on it and just kind of move it around, shuffle it around, so it gets that odor on it. And dogs associate food as a good thing, right? So you can then feed the dog, pour it in the dog's bowl, and they're associating that smell as a good thing too. So
that's a really cool idea. That's a great idea. I like that one a lot, Paul. So in the situation where a dog, might act like a little anxious or jealous around an infant, what are some of the things that we can do to kind of smooth things over? What are some ways that we can kind of make the dog, because obviously the infant can't participate all that much, make the dog feel more comfortable and not threatened by the existence of this new being in the household?
That's a great question. And a lot of times I don't even think it's that the dog's threatened. It's more that before the baby comes home, the dog is the focal point in the family, and then they bring the baby home, and all the attention's going to the baby, nurturing it and taking care of the baby. The dog gets put on the back burner and then starts acting out. That's when you'll see stuff happen. It's not usually when this baby first comes home. It's down the road, because the dog was like, wow, I used to get all this attention, and now I don't get attention at all because they're focused on the baby.
It's like Lady and the Tramp syndrome, for those who have seen that classic movie, and that's what happens in the movie. So make sure we don't completely start ignoring our dogs when we bring home a baby, right?
Right, and get them involved. And once your dog has training and knows, has obedience commands, things like that, you can always redirect their attention. So if it's not an appropriate time to be by the baby, you can teach them, to go to a place or spot in the room and lay down and hold it. Just redirect their attention somewhere else, which comes in handy when you're changing a baby's diapers. Trust me, I went through that one. And so the dog's not over there smelling and doing all that stuff. But also, definitely get them involved and keep them involved. So if you don't, that's when they start they start misbehaving, and you'll see other behaviors that escalate from that. So from jealousy.
That sounds also like good advice. You're obviously a very capable trainer, and it's really great to hear the things that you're saying, because they all just have, it's all a lot of good common sense, but it's just stuff that you really need to be a professional to know how to shape and form these, even the ideas, and how to explain it to people. And now, when we make the decision to add a second dog to a family, because I'm a big advocate of the two-dog family lifestyle, I believe that here I'm just my opinion for what it's worth. I find that households, generally speaking, with two dogs have an easier time. Of course, it's a little more expensive, and I don't want to ignore that fact. But with two dogs, the dogs do tend to comfort each other, and you don't have as much anxiety or separation issues when you leave a dog at home, which, all of us have to leave our dogs home sometimes. I mean, I don't recommend more than 6 to 8 hours at a time. That's really starting to get a little bit too long for the dogs for bathroom and stuff. But when choosing a second dog to add to the family, what are some of the things that we need to be aware of?
First off, that the dogs are going to get along, and I would, if you're going to do it, number one, I would do it and introduce them in neutral territory, because if you just bring a new dog into the house, the other dog, that's their territory, so they may be more inclined to react or defend their territory and claim their territory. So do it on neutral ground where they can. It's sniff, get to know each other, make sure they're going to get along, things like that, and just make sure that they're going to be able to coexist together. Some dogs, we see it on both sides. Sometimes that works great, and other times it's a disaster because the dogs don't get along, or the one dog may start getting food aggression, or be possessive of its toys or its bones, and a lot of times it just starts out as a growl, like back off, this is mine, and then if it's not fixed pretty fast, then it escalates, and then it turns into all the dogs do is turn and look at each other, and it can turn into a fight pretty quick. And then a lot of times that's when we're getting the calls when that's already happened. Now my dogs are fighting. What do? They got along great for 3 months or six months, and we're in a jam. Can you help us? So that stuff is fixable, but the main thing is be proactive. Just if you're going to get another dog, don't wait for the problems to escalate. Just get them trained, and so they know what's acceptable, what you want from them, and they have rules and boundaries.
So introduce on neutral territories is a great idea, and try to know your current dog and try to find a dog that's compatible. Like if you have a really active dog, is it good to get another dog that's very active so that they can be rambunctious together, or do you try to balance it out with a dog that's calmer? I know there's no hard and fast rules, but I'm just wondering what your suggestion is along those lines.
Yeah, if you have a real active dog, if you get a new dog that's not active at all, or vice versa, what can happen is the one that's not active really doesn't always want to play, and the active dog wants to play. So then you see that can cause problems too, because the one dog is more of a lazy dog that just kind of likes to lay around and hang out, and the other one's constantly wants to play, so it's in its space and nipping at it, like play biting and trying to engage the other dog, and sometimes that can go bad. But yeah, so I would get either the lower energy dogs. Just get one that kind of matches your dog's energy level, I guess.
So try to get really more of a match than that. Opposites attract is not really the rule to go by with dogs then.
And another place we see it is when people have a dog that's, let's say, 7, 8 years old, and they decide to bring a new dog into the house, a puppy, or a rescue that's younger with more energy. And the older dogs, they're past that real playful stage where they want to play all day, and they just don't have the energy for it. And the puppy's like, what do you mean? I want to play. You're not going to play with me? And then you see it there, too, where the older dogs are like, just, leave me alone. I just want to lay here and hang out in the sun,
Right. So, and there's also, I think that, in the perfect world, and it's wonderful when this happens, that, a younger dog comes in and the dog that's, not, advanced geriatric, but an older dog, they can be really revitalized. If they're a dog that used to be a little more active, but they just have kind of gotten just a little lazy or a little bored, and not to be critical of the laziness, you know what I mean, but they're just kind of quieted down. Sometimes it can work wonders to get the, your current dog kind of more active again and more engaged. So I think that the best advice that you can possibly give is to try to match your lifestyle and type. If you're starting with a new puppy, of course, you're not going to have a lot of information about that dog's specific behavior, but you can know something about that dog based on their breed, or even if they're a mixed breed, you can usually get an idea, if you have some idea what type of mixed breeds they are, as to what personality traits they would lean towards.
And if you have an older dog and it's a well-balanced dog, if the younger dog has more energy and wants to play, a lot of times, dogs communicate to each other. So the older dog, you'll see just kind of like growl and just kind of give it a warning, back off, I don't want to play. And the puppy understands that. So they communicate back and forth so that they can also resolve it that way pretty quick.
Great. Now, I'm going to just take one more quick break, and then we'll come back for our final segment. And we really appreciate your being on with us, and you've given us just really, really good, concise answers. And I just had to remind everyone, these are just all starting points. And the reason that businesses like Sit Means Sit exist, and other trainers and training facilities, is exactly for this reason, so that those of us who would love dogs and love having them in our lives can have professional help in making that experience the most positive it can possibly be for the life of the dog. I mean, let's face it, that's a lifetime commitment. and having someone who is an expert in training and who can be a little bit more dispassionate, because sometimes even just the patience factor can be tough with our own dogs, just like with our own kids. So I think having someone who's a third party who's got the professional tools as well as the patience, you'd be amazed at the difference it can make. So, Paul, thank you so much, and we'll be back in 1 minute to wrap up.
Look forward to it.
Love for the human race, make it a better place. People of the world, let's get together.
Welcome back to Clear Conscience Pet Radio on the All Paul's Pet Talk Radio Network. And this is your host, Anthony Benny, with our very special guest today, Paul Pollock, of Sit Means Sit, which is a pretty emphatic name for a dog training operation, but that pretty much says it, doesn't it? Sit means sit, and stay means stay, and come means come, and those are the three critical commands, aren't they, Paul?
Absolutely.
You know, when they do these canine good citizenship tests, which is, I think, one of the cool things that's been added to the, you know, in the old days, dog shows were pretty much all just looking at dogs and how pretty they were, which I found kind of boring, frankly. But I really think that the AKC has shown their wisdom by allowing a lot more variety into their events, and one of them is the Canine Good Citizenship testing. And of course, you're familiar with that. And what does that consist of, Paul? The basic Canine Good Citizenship kind of certificate.
We do the Canine Good Citizen certificates and therapy dogs as well, and a lot of what both the tests are overlap on a lot of the exercises or things the dogs need to be able to do. But it's being able to accept a pet from a stranger, so a stranger can come up and pet them, touch their feet, things like that. Be able to hold a sit and have the owner walk away. You need to be able to hand the leash off to someone and let them leave the room. It's called a separated supervision. So if someone was out somewhere, hey, can you hold my dog? Whether they have to run and grab something out of their car or use the restroom or something like that, someone can hold their dog, and the dog's not going to go into a panic mode. They have to be able to be brushed by a stranger, so you can have like a brush, a dog brush or comb, and run it through them, make sure they're okay with that, things like that.
And what about one of the toughest things for those? And I'll confess to you, as the host of this program, who is very well educated in nutrition and have written and spoken tons about nutrition and all the aspects of that. And the reason I love talking to trainers is because that's not my area of expertise. And one of the toughies is the recall, is that essential when your dog is heading off into some other direction, to get them to come back to you. And I know that there's no quick instant fixes for any of this. It's doing the work. But what are some tips for getting a dog to do the recall, to come when called?
The main thing you want to do is, number one, you have to be able to get the dog's attention. So if it's focused on something else or distracted by something else, you have to have a way to communicate and enforce the command. We always teach our customers, if you're going to give the command, enforce it. If you're not going to enforce it, don't give it. So there's a lot of different ways you can do it, depending on your training style. But you can use remote collars. You can use a long line with a leash, and always make sure the dog comes back to you every time. So, and some dogs are just more opportunistic than others. So if they see a squirrel and take off, they're, a shout or a treat, it's not going to work, because the value of that treat is not the value of that squirrel they're chasing. It's a higher value.
They weigh the options and you lose.
Right. So the first thing we teach every dog we train and a client is to teach their dog to come to you on command around distractions. So with our training, we train around distractions. So we want you to be able to have your dog in any situation and know with confidence it's going to listen. Because the reality is, think about it, out in the real world, there's always going to be distractions, whether it's a car, a squirrel, a kid, another dog, a cat. They're out there. It's going to happen. Someone knocking at your door. There's always distractions. So you have to be able to get the dog's attention and understand. If I call you, I'm not being mean, but you have to come to me. It's not an option. Just like you wouldn't let your kid run into the street, So there's rules.
Perfect sense. Now, we're kind of coming to the end, and we could do a full hour with you, and I hope that you will come back with us again and do a full hour, and we can do some call-ins and get some questions from our listeners about some specific things, and that really requires an hour to make sure that we get some good questions in. But before we break up for today, first I want to just give you your props as the winner. Your organization, Sit Means Sit of Cleveland Akron, is the winner in both 2009, 11, and 12 of the Fox 8 Best Dog Training in your area, as well as the Akron Beacon newspaper, 2010, 2011, 2012 Best Dog Training, and you've been on Animal Planet, ESPN, Outdoor Channel. So, I mean, we're talking, folks, to a real expert here, and we're really fortunate to have Paul with us. So I want to ask Paul's advice for those of us who aren't fortunate enough to be close enough to go and see Paul personally, how to choose a dog trainer in our area. What are some of the key things to look for and maybe to avoid as our kind of last question for today's program?
The key I would look for is, number one, I always tell people, look at have the trainer bring their dog or see the trainer's dog, because anyone can tell you they're a dog trainer and they have great success and your dog will be perfect, but the proof's in the pudding. Look at their dog. If their dog is well-behaved and well-mannered and listens to them around distractions, whether it's outside or inside, that's a really good sign right there. You have to, if they just come in and say, hey, I can train the dog, you're just going on their word. And if you're able to see their dog, that's even more beneficial. So that you can also talk to some clients that they work with, and I wouldn't just ask for 3 because anyone can give you a name of 3 people they had success with. Talk to a number of them, do your homework, and then also see what they can do with your dog. See how they interact with it. And like with Sit Means Sit, we always do a free in-home demonstration where we'll come out to the house, or sometimes people come to the facility but with their dog. But we do a demonstration right on the spot to show you that we're going to be able to help you and make a difference. So that way you know what's going to work. You're not going in and saying, well, I hope this is going to work out. You'll see it's going to work. And there's a lot of other people that other companies that do that as well, I'm sure. But always look at the trainer's dog.
That's great advice, both of those. Look, if you go into a facility, by all means, see, if the owner or any of the training staff have their personal dogs with them, see how their dogs interact with them, and insist. I say, I'm sorry, I'm just going to come right out and say, insist on an introductory session. Not that you're trying to get something for nothing, but you need to see style-wise, personality-wise, if there's going to be a good match, and also just see the way that individual interacts with your dog, and you'll learn a lot about them as a trainer, and also that personal decision whether you feel comfortable with that person. So I think it's great that you offer that, and I hereby declare that everyone who does training as a profession and wants your trust should offer you that same option that Paul's offering his clients. I think that's a fantastic thing to do, and that's, I think, where we're going to wrap up for today. When you choose a trainer who has proven that they not only have some experience. I mean, everybody deserves a chance to get started in a new profession, but let's face it, experience is one of the greatest things, is to have somebody who has some background and some track record, have someone who's willing to do an introductory session, have you bring the dog to their facility to interact some or to come to your home, and above all else, kindness. And this is my opinion, is that I believe that good trainers are always kind. They're firm, but they're kind. And my lifestyle feeling about how we interact with our canines as companions requires kindness at all times. So I hope you agree with that, Paul. I can't imagine that you don't. And
absolutely, I do.
On that note, I want everyone to visit cleveland.sitmeansit.com. Follow these guys on Facebook, follow them on Twitter, and there's a lot of great resources on the website. Even if you're not in the Cleveland area, you can get some really good background on training, and it'll help you to choose a trainer in your area. So, Paul, thank you so much for being with us on Clear Conscience Pet Radio today, and I absolutely insist that you come back and join us again sometime. I hope you can do that for us.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I'd love to. Anytime.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Paul. And thank you all for listening to Clear Conscience Pet Radio. And remember, your dog is your best friend. Treat them the same way. Thank you so much for being here.